One now live.
Thank you, Aish. Welcome everyone to this evening's FBS Chat. So today we have Rachel Gillibrand, who we've had on before, but tonight we're going to look at some other things that you've been up to. And my co-host Gil from
Hello.
Formulates, and my colleague Jason. So welcome everyone. I know Rachel, you've been doing a lot of work with EEG and asking solution-focused questions to patients and seeing the effects on the brain waves. So what was this particular project about?
So this project, Joe, was about looking at what happens in what we might call a neurodiverse brain. And I know the terms neurotypical, neurodiverse are complicated. But what I've been looking at is people who might be considered to have ADHD or be on the autism spectrum, and to see how they respond to different questions in a solution-focused conversation. And it's been really interesting. You can probably imagine there's an enormous amount of data we collected because, these are quite long conversations, half an hour or so of data. And I thought it would be fun just to look at how people conceptualize the best hopes question, because it's something that we use a lot, whether we ask it very deliberately as a what are your best hopes, or whether we have our own variant of that. It sets the scene, the contract for the session. And I thought, let's see how people react to that question. And what I've got today is some little video clips of people who've never heard this question before. And, we're so used to asking it, I think we almost forget how important it is, that it's actually something that really matters. And it's quite interesting to see how people hear this question and how they try to answer it, because it's a tough question.
Yeah. So was there a comparison made with someone who was neurotypical compared to
Yeah. So I've got sort of videos of a range of people. What I'm going to present today is initially we've got a little bit of comparison between male and female brain, but most of the work will be men between the ages of sort of 40 and 65. So
I'm just under that age range, unfortunately. No, what shame.
No, I know. I would have asked.
And was this project in collaboration with any colleagues?
Yeah, so this is primarily with Adam Froer in the States, Meerland in Copenhagen, and the data collection, some of it has been using the University of Gloucestershire research labs to collect some of it as well. And then it's me. You'll hear me in these clips doing my best. No criticism allowed.
No. So I don't know about the rest of you guys. I can't wait to see it. We did have a sneak peek like months ago, and I thought, oh my god! So I'm really looking forward to this. I don't know about the rest of you guys.
So Rachel, specifically, this is looking at the brains of the participants in response to the best hopes question.
It is. Yeah, I've got my own little EEG kit. So it's looking at the electrical activity of the brain during these questions. And it delivers quite a nice, I've used the 2-dimensional images today, top-down look at the brain. And so when we look at the images, imagine you are looking at the top down of the brain, nose, if you like, at the top, ears at the sides, back of the brain at the bottom of the image. I'll talk you through one in a moment. In fact, actually, why not? Let's just have a little look. So we will have a little look here. Okay. So if we look at these images, we've got a male and female brain at rest. There's no sound on these two. You see that we've got the left hemisphere on the left and the right hemisphere on the right. We're looking down on top of these brains. Nose is at the top. And just very short little clips, these, of just looking at the brain at rest. What's interesting here is we've got the ADHD brain on the left. That's a brain at rest for him. And the person on the autism spectrum, that's his brain at rest. And I think you can see there are quite considerable differences. If we think the activity at the front of the brain, at the top of the image, that's a kind of information gathering, information evaluation activity going on. So top left, this region here, this brain is just gathering information about what's happening in the room. They're literally just sat there waiting for the study to start. We collect a couple of minutes of this activity for a while. And this person, we can see that we've got a lot of activity in the visual areas. So they are processing what they see, creating visual images of what's happening around them. And they're trying to pattern match. Have I been here before? Have I seen this room before? They're trying very hard to match to a previous experience, if you like.
Right, Rachel?
Now, yeah.
Could you tell us again the characteristics of the different brain waves, theta, alpha, beta, gamma?
Sure. So in both of these images, we got a ton of blue. Blue is theta, and theta is kind of a relaxed meditative state. It's quite, the sort of simple problem solving. Somebody is active and making sense of what's going on. We can see alpha, which is purple, that is visual, but that's also quite relaxed. It's a nice place to be when you're in alpha. So the activity that's going on is not stressful in any sense. It's kind of nice. And the pink, the beta, that's quite a fast brainwave, and that is kind of conscious processing of information. And so there's conscious activity going on here, which if you look at the ASD brain on the right, you see there's a lot of activity here in the evaluation section of the brain. So this person is working really hard to evaluate the situation that they're finding themselves in. So this is kind of interesting. This is coming to conclusions about what is going on. So they're producing quite a lot of activity there. The person with ADHD isn't really coming to any conclusions about the situation they're in. They are just trying to pattern match. So this person is working hard to make sense of it, whereas the person with the ADHD brain is still working to find a pattern match. What's going on here? Am I doing this right? Is this okay? But not coming to any conclusions, if you like, in this snapshot here. Interestingly, the person with autism is actually finding conclusions. They're like, okay, this is all right. Yep, I'm fine. Everything is okay. So we're seeing quite a lot of problem solving, if you like, in this image.
And hardly any activity towards the back. What does that tell us?
Not a great deal at the moment. That's okay. Think about the bottom right-hand quadrant here, which is, if you like, the right area of the brain towards the back. That is emotion. There's a lot of emotion goes on in this area here. So we will see later emotion picking up here. And that will often be beta, the pink, and red, the gamma, because that's a lot of thought going into that. The emotion isn't so much often a relaxed experience with what we're going to see, but it is quite a powerful experience. It's quite a powerful emotion that's going on. So that'll be interesting to spot some emotion here. Bottom left, a lot of kind of logical thought, a lot of image generation. So if we were asking them perhaps a preferred future question, we would be asking them to generate an image of how things could be. And we would actually typically see a lot going on here. But interestingly, there is quite a lot going on in the ADHD brain here, trying to find the pattern that they're looking for as they just sit and relax, trying to think about, what is it like to relax? Am I relaxing? Is this what relaxing looks like? There's a lot of processing going on there in the ADHD brain.
Rachel, I have another question. There's different hertz range for like 4 to 8 for theta.
Yeah.
Gamma's 30 hertz. What does that represent?
Oh, you're good. That is cycles per minute. No, second. Somebody correct me. What is a hertz?
I would
Rachel.
Somebody Google it. Yeah, so it's speed. It's speed. They're named in order of discovery, rather frustratingly, if you're trying to learn this for an exam. So alpha was the first brainwave to be discovered and mapped. That was sort of in the 1920s. And then as we got better at detecting the kind of the detail, if you like, of the different brainwaves, then we discovered beta, which was faster than alpha. We discovered theta. Before that, in fact, we discovered delta. No, delta came after theta, and then gamma. So we don't actually have delta waves shown here. That's a function of the software that we've run the data through. We do actually have delta in the raw data, but this particular software platform doesn't show delta. It doesn't matter. It's a very, very slow brainwave. It's associated with kind of deep meditation, deep sleep. So,
Rachel, just so you know that Mike Parker, who's watching on YouTube, has confirmed it's cycles per second.
Yeah, I think it was quicker than minutes. Minutes felt very slow. Very slow. And of course, Aisha, we know how much energy the brain actually produces in its resting state, don't we? How many watts?
We certainly do. What was it, 20?
It was 20. Yeah.
20 watts, yeah. Enough to light a dim light bulb. That's
very dim light bulb. So yeah, thanks, Jason. We learnt that on Friday.
yeah. So when someone says dim or somebody's dim, then it's enough
Then
energy to light a light bulb. So there you go.
Shall I move to the brain's answering the best hopes question? Have we kind of got our heads straight on some of this? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So if we actually look, this is male and female typical answering best hopes. Again, this doesn't have sound, this particular copy. You'll notice the woman is producing a lot more visual elements in answering the question. That to answer the best hopes question required her to see a variant of what might happen in the session. The man went more into just information. What do I need to know? I need to know this. And then if we look again at ADHD and ASD, look how much information gathering and evaluation is happening in the ASD brain. You know, this is testing the question, testing the answer. Is this the one I want to give? We're getting a lot of gamma. We're getting really deep focus now on this question. So frontal lobe, it's extraordinary. It really is high level processing, you know, it's really impactful stuff. Compare that to ADHD, he's doing a lot of visualization, a lot of information gathering, and a little spark just then of finding the answer. But it's taking a lot of energy, a lot of work before he comes up with his answer to that question. And there's a bit of emotion there picking up in the bottom right. So he's still going. He's still trying to find his answer. It took a long time for him to come up with that answer. And, you know, a lot of that work is intense. You know, talking to people afterwards. What was it like for you? How was it being asked this question? Guy with ADHD, you know, this took a while. This was quite hard work for him. Was it the right hope for the session? How do I know if it's going to be the right hope for the session? There could be other hopes. What if I don't ask about them? What if this thing comes up? What if that comes up? He was testing so many options and reaching into the emotion. Do I go into this place today? Do I, you know, what's needed here? You compare that with a person on the autism spectrum, and he is like, what do I need to know? Is this the thing I need to know? I think it might be. Let's just see. Do you think it is? Yeah, it is. It's good. And he's just frontal lobe, very kind of high level functioning here, very much kind of going into testing the question and then delivering.
Rachel, is there a difference in terms of how long it takes them to respond to that question?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The people that we might consider more neurotypical find the question quite quickly, and they don't seem to particularly test it for, is it good enough? Mm-hmm. They seem to be okay with introducing a concept quickly that then we'll explore later. So theirs doesn't take very long at all, 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. You know, when we look at somebody with autism answering that question, there's a lot of focus. There's a lot of testing out that question. But he doesn't seem to really lose that question. He's just working through what might happen if he asks that question. Mm. The person with ADHD is accessing all areas of the brain. They're really, really trying to find what might be appropriate, because they think of a question, they evaluate it, then it triggers an emotion, and then it maybe triggers an image of something that happens next, and then they go off on another tangent, and then they go somewhere else, and then they go somewhere else. And to find the focus for the session requires a lot of travel within that kind of question of what are your best hopes from today. Mm-hmm. It requires a lot of analysis and a lot of kind of journeying through different alternatives. Because what I do have in a moment is spoken versions of this. Mm. You'll hear the difference when we are somebody with a typical brain, somebody with the autism spectrum disorder, and somebody ADHD. You'll really be able to pick up on how differently they approach the question. Mm. It's so fun.
That's a nice tease. I can't wait.
Sorry to jump in, Rachel. So looking at that brain, like the ADHD brain, where it's all flaring up all over, I can only imagine that's just like a brief moment. Imagine that all day. Is that why they're exhausted, or people that have ADHD are just mentally drained by the end of the day because of all that brain activity? I mean, is that what's going on here?
That's what I think. You know, I've got a lot of data, and the ADHD brain is working so hard all the time, and it seems to be trying to work out if it's doing the right thing all the time. Never mind, am I answering the question in the right way? Am I being the right way? Am I this? Am I that? Am I the other? A lot of people with ADHD have experiences in the past where perhaps they've reacted in a way that other people haven't reacted in a situation. So something has happened and they have really kind of, I don't know, delivered a response that felt right to them, but then from the reaction of the crowd, if you like, realized that it wasn't the right thing to say or do or be or sit or, you know, run or walk. So as they grow older, they find themselves questioning their response before they deliver it. They find themselves kind of really like, oh, last time I was in this situation, I did the wrong thing. Well, let's just check to see what everybody else is doing, and then I'll do what everybody else is doing, and then everything should be okay. So we see quite a lot of that work going on with people with ADHD, and that comes through their conversation as well. That this is something they work very hard to do, to know if they're doing the right thing in each situation. And I think that is partly why they're so exhausted by the end of the day.
So listening to what you're saying there, that they're trying to go back to past experiences, is that why whenever you're having a conversation, they always bring it back upon themselves? And people that don't know that somebody has ADHD, it might come across as, I don't know, that they're just talking about me all the time, but that's their way of trying to take part in a conversation, is by bringing up something that's happened to them in the past. Like you said, they just keep drawing back on past experiences.
I don't know. Maybe, maybe
it's quite an
that's
interesting
thing. Yeah.
It's quite an interesting thought when you're saying they're just constantly going through past experiences. Because I know that when talking with ADHD or someone who has ADHD, they tend to draw a lot of what's happened to them in the past to explain a situation.
And
which
it's
is quite
difficult.
interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, but it's also difficult to extract that from obviously learned behaviors as well. Remember how last time you did this was wrong. So it's really difficult to offer a concise answer to that. But I think what you're asking raises some really interesting points, and I'd be so interested to hear what other people think. If anybody has anything who's watching this and thinks, well, actually, I could offer this comment, do, because what I don't want to do is speak for people without them having a voice themselves. That we bring in everybody's voice in this. That's why I also in some of this.
Sorry, Rachel, you've got a couple of questions. If you want to receive them now or in a minute. So
Yeah,
the first one's from Catherine. Is there a difference in male-female with ASD, ADHD?
That would be really interesting to see. I have deliberately stuck with men for this presentation to try and, I suppose, address a question for men with these diagnoses. But again, that doesn't mean a great deal either, does it? Because we know that everybody has quite a unique experience within kind of autism spectrum and ADHD. So is it a false element of control that I've added to this today? It was the only one I could add. And I thought that would be interesting, comparing the male and female brains at the beginning, with the kind of resting state and answering the best hopes kind of silently. I thought, well, I'll just reduce the amount of variation that we see. But there is a lot to be done in this work. And looking at women in this, and looking at people who identify as a gender different to their sex, or anything like that, it'd be really interesting to see what the similarities are and the differences. So, great question. Don't have the answer yet.
So, Rachel.
Yeah.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think with the ADHD brain, we can inhibit a lot of signals coming in if we're not ADHD, so we can kind of focus on something that we're interested in or in that moment. But with an ADHD brain, that from what I understand, that is more difficult. So all these things are coming in all at once, which is why the brain's lighting up as much as it does. So in terms of the focus and everything else, in terms of it, if I was an educator watching this, what would you hope I'd get out of it? Because too many children on the spectrum are excluded from mainstream education for no fault of their own.
They are, and that is something to consider, because with neurodivergence we can find that some of those filters work differently to people with neurotypicality, again, if there is such a thing. But We can see what we might call hyperfocus in people on the autism spectrum, and we can see it with ADHD. We can see a hyperfocus that actually they can exclude everything and really focus and work hard on one thing, and suddenly come up and it's like 2 hours later, and where did that go? And then both people with autism and people with ADHD can be overwhelmed by noise and busyness. People with ADHD can be kind of excited by noise and busyness, energized by it. People react so differently with everything. I think simply being somebody who has ADHD or might be on the autism spectrum or might be typical isn't enough to explain how they might react in a situation and in school. And it comes back to talking to the individual. What is the better environment for you? And how might we be able to help you achieve it? Shall we have a little...
Can I just go with Alice very quickly, and then you can share that one. So Alice is asking, this is amazing to know. How do you think the results compare if a person is masking heavily?
Okay, that is a great question, Alice. So what do we think? Masking involves a lot of energy and a lot of brain energy in terms of trying to work out if you're doing the right thing, or not showing that you're different, or trying to cope with the noise around you, or trying to cope with what's happening around you. I would expect to see a lot of brain activity going on there. And perhaps we might be seeing that in the person here with ADHD, because they are presenting in the research situation a version of themselves, right? Does that then explain how much activity is going on to answer a question? When we think about somebody on the autism spectrum, how do we know that we are approaching them in a way that works for them, in a way that enables them to be able to talk or to communicate their needs in a situation without having the need to mask? Is there a range of masking? Is there a light mask and a heavy mask? We can only ask the question of the person that we're talking to, and then look at the data and see if we can detect differences. I hope that kind of answers the question. It's a good one. It's an excellent question. And it would be interesting to consider that. But it's a lot. To unpack that question, it's a lot. There's a lot going on in everybody's brain. We might consider ourselves neurotypical, but we've got a worry or concern. And what version of ourselves are we presenting in the research room? What version of ourselves are we presenting in the therapy room? We might have had an awful journey to get here. We might have people that we're caring for that have, a lot of needs right now. We might have financial worries. We might have all of these things going on. How do, neurotypical people also present in these situations when there's stuff going on? It's a great question.
Thank you, Rachel.
What's next on the slide, Rachel?
Okay, shall we have a look?
Yeah, fill us in.
Let's have a look. So, right, let's have a little look. Where did we get to? We got to that one, right. Okay, this one has volume. So this is quite a quietly spoken person. But essentially what they're saying is written there in the darker color there, in the sort of brown. Essentially, they're going to be saying something along the lines of, I want to feel more energized, more lifted. I want a feeling of bounce, moving a bit quicker, a bit ahead of the game, a bit more get up and go, a bit more bounce. That's kind of the answer. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it, but like I said, they are softly spoken. Let's see how we do.
What are your best hopes from us talking today?
Well, I would like to feel a little bit more energized, really. A little bit lifted.
So that was what he said. I want to feel a bit more energized, a bit more lifted. Did you notice how quickly the answer came? Now, I continued that conversation with him, and it developed into a sense of, what would that mean to you? What does that look like? A feeling of levity, a feeling of bounce. I'd be moving a bit quicker, a bit ahead of the game, a bit more get up and go. This person would be hoping to see a bit of positivity, a bit of control over things that are happening, a bit of mind over matter, he says. What would that be like? It would lift my mood. I get that lovely lift. I'd be happy, feeling happy. I feel better, feeling a level of contentment, a bit of pride, a bit of familiarity. You can see that we've moved on from the best hopes there to exploring what that would look like, kind of preferred future talk in that question. But notice how quickly he came to that answer. I'll play it again. It's very short.
What are your best hopes from us talking today?
You notice a lot of processing. What is the question? What does it mean? What is my answer?
Well, I would like to feel a little bit more energized, really. A little bit lifted.
So very quick to come to the answer, this one. It wasn't difficult for him to think about what would be useful today. Let's have a look at some of the others. So this is the best hopes question for somebody on the autism spectrum.
What are your best hopes from us talking today?
To understand why I answered some of the questions in the way that I did.
The questions on the little measures I've just given you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If I can just explain, as part of the research, they are required to complete a measure of anxiety and low mood or depression as a screening tool before we continue with the research. So that's kind of a part of the ethical process of doing this work, so that we can hopefully identify people who might be quite poorly. And so we would ask them if they want to continue with the research or not. And obviously it's their choice to not continue, whether the session would then become a more therapeutic session, if you like, that isn't recorded if they were talking about something they weren't comfortable talking about. This person was happy to continue.
Because some of them are very probing, and as I say, some of them are almost as if you're reading my mind before we even started.
And what do you mean by that? They were relevant or?
Incredibly relevant, but certainly not something that I would share with anybody.
Okay, all right then. So if we were to think about those questions in a little more detail, would that be useful for you today?
I guess.
Okay. Would something else be more useful for us to talk about today?
I can't think of anything else that would be useful to think about.
Look how much activity is in that top left quadrant, if you like, the frontal part of the brain, where he is assessing the question. He's really working hard to see whether something else would be something he would talk about today, whether he's okay going ahead with the question or the focus of the session so far. There was a lot of work to reach that answer.
Okay. Just something about those questions. Yeah.
Those questions are what's in my mind at this moment in time.
Okay. So thinking about the questions that you've just answered, what is it that, or what is it about the questions that would be useful to talk about?
One particular question, as in why I have thoughts about not really being bothered about whether I'm alive or dead.
Okay. And is that
at the age of 54, as in I've done it all, it doesn't really matter anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And did your answer to that question surprise you then?
No, the question being there in the first place surprised me. Okay. The answer didn't surprise me because obviously I know what I think about. I know that I think about that fairly often, but I don't know if that's normal, if it's not normal, because it's not the kind of thing you ask other people. Do you think about that all the time?
Mm. Okay. Okay. So it was surprising that the question was asked as part of a mix of questions.
Yeah, and it's surprising in almost that it might be normal because the question's there in the first place, as if it is something everybody thinks about.
Mm. So thinking about that question then, it's kind of, would it matter if I was here or not type question.
I don't think it's whether it matters whether I'm here or not. That sounds quite almost big-headed, as if I matter. It's more like I'm not bothered.
Mm. So you're not bothered if you're here or not?
Yeah, to a certain extent, yeah.
And is that something that's fairly recent, or is that something you've had for a while?
Well, it's certainly not something that's come up recently. It's things like this, something I've had for a number of years.
Mm. Mm. So if this session was to be useful to you, what is it that you think I should be asking you about that right now?
Well, the obvious question being to ask me why, but it's such a deep question, I'm not sure I could answer that within a couple of sentences. That's almost a number of sessions to kind of pull that information out.
Mm. And so it might be too big a concept.
Too big a concept or too big a subject for this initial session. If there were sessions afterwards, I might actually give some thought between sessions as to what I might want to share.
Mm. Would it help if we identified a part of the concept to talk about?
What do you mean a part of the concept?
I'm kind of thinking, if it's too big a thing to resolve in one session, is there a bit of it that we might talk about today?
Maybe. Maybe the other thing for me is it a problem or is it normal? Or is it maybe not normal at a certain age, or maybe it becomes normal at another age?
Mm.
And maybe it's something then not to worry about. As in, why do I have these thoughts? And having these thoughts are unsettling. Maybe they worry me, maybe they make me a bit anxious, as in, is that normal, or does everybody think about that kind of thing?
If we were to think about the question being bothered about whether you're here or not, and you're thinking, is it normal or not? if that kind of, if we were to somehow work out whether it was normal or not to have those thoughts, would that be useful?
Perhaps, or maybe that I don't really care that I have these thoughts. Is that normal?
Okay. Okay.
Everybody has these thoughts, no doubt, but some people might think, that's not good, I should snap out of it, I should live for today, there's positive things. But I don't know whether it's very normal to think about it and think, yeah, whatever, who cares? I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
That was unexpected. That was very unexpected. I hadn't anticipated that that would be the topic, you know, the best hope for today. You can see how it took a while to identify something we could work with today. And it took a lot of thinking. I was very careful to ensure that he had enough time to formulate what he wanted to say. From the brain perspective, there was a lot going on at the front. There was a lot of thinking going on there, a lot of processing there, a lot of evaluation going on there. I'd appreciate your thoughts. What are your thoughts?
Were these, Rachel, were these clients or recruited as research participants?
Research participants.
Okay.
You know exactly what was going on in my mind.
It was interesting because at first he was trying to look at what was the logic of the questions that you're answering. Why are you asking me those questions? And then he wanted to understand why he answered them the way he did. But also there was a part of him that felt this question is quite intrusive for a first meeting. It's something that maybe I should expect 3 or 4 sessions down the line. So he was trying to figure out, it was almost like, that's a bit of an intrusive question for someone I've just met. In a logical sense. So it was, and that thing worrying what he felt, if I felt that I should be here, that somehow it was big-headed. That I should, you know, just accept that this is my age, we're aging, at some point we're not going to be here. It was very, very logical, but part of it, there was a bit of that emotion in the sense that I don't think I'm worthy of that kind of thought. Do you know what I mean? Or people worrying about why I should feel that way. It was very, very, very interesting.
Yes.
Bloody hell. Yeah. And I wasn't sure if he wanted to share it.
Yes.
And again, it's kind of this, I'm not sure if that's normal, as if he was trying to struggle with what would be perceived as normal. What is normal?
What is normal?
Yeah. No.
Rachel, it seemed like most of the activity was left front part of the brain. Every once in a while, there'd be a quick lighting up in the left rear.
Yes.
Didn't last long, but every so often. What do you think was going on there?
So what have we got going on there? You know, we've got logic areas, you know, maybe some logical thinking. Does this feel logical to have this thought? Am I presenting it in the way that is understandable to the other person? Is there a bit of visual imagery going on? You know, is he seeing something that is helping him to shape that answer? Is there something there that I don't know what he saw, of course, but was there something that was part of that answer that was a visual component? I think one of the challenges of the top-down approach of this is we can't see from the side. And I do have recordings from the side as well. It'd be interesting to see if it was visual or parietal. It'd be interesting to see, occipital or parietal, and whether it's logic that's being accessed there, or whether there was visual imagery at play or as well. What were your thoughts, Gil? What do you think?
Well, I just think he's just further searching for an answer. And maybe he wasn't satisfied in his thinking. He wasn't satisfied with the answer he was getting ready to give, so he wanted to continue searching. So it just activated the left rear quadrant of the brain. But it was very quick. It didn't stay lighted up for very long.
I agree. It was quite a flash, wasn't it? It was like a little bit there, but so much of the activity at the front.
And a couple of times, just a little bit of the right front quadrant, but that was even briefer. Yes,
and that could be your kind of eureka moment. Yes, this is what I need to say. This is how I need to say it. So there was a little of that, wasn't there? Yeah.
Do you have any to show us for ADHD?
Oh yeah. That's coming next. Any more questions on the ASD?
Can I just ask, what if a person has ASD and ADHD?
Yeah, sure. It will be good to see, right? Does one dominate the other? Does one respond differently to different types of questions to the other? It would be really interesting to see that. As far as I'm aware, nobody that I've looked at has both diagnoses, if you like, or conditions, or differences, however you want to describe them. So I don't know, but it would be great. We need more people with more kit answering all these questions, because there's every time I do something like this, it's like, what if?
Yeah. Catherine was asking the questions because someone very dear to her has both. So I've asked a question, Catherine. There you go.
Because this is the thing, isn't it? Everything we discover, it generates more questions, and would be great, wouldn't it, to see. I have recordings, but just focusing on Best Hopes today, for instance, but I have the whole sessions recorded, and we can look at preferred future, we can look at scaling, we can look at different things. It takes a while to work this all out, but it's joyful for me. I love looking at this and trying to work it out. So
what I'd like to see is that look at any changes from the first session to termination to see how the brain changed. I would assume there's going to be changes in the brain as a result of successful coaching or therapy.
I think you'll actually be able to hear some of that with the ADHD recording, because that person has had more than one session. And you'll start to hear, you'll hear it. They say, and so would notice, and it would mean this, and it would do that, and they confidently carry on the conversation, if you like, by themselves. And I do think it's interesting to look at the first time you hear these questions, because second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time, there's anticipation. You know what the questions are going to be. You might be rehearsing them before you walk in the room. A lot of people actually say to me, I know you're going to ask this question. I should have thought about it in the car on the way over. But to see what happens when somebody hears it for the first time gives us a real indication of the work needed to answer this question. But notice too that this question can produce a very, challenging discussion, something that is quite emotional and powerful. But the conversation continues. There was no withdrawal from the conversation. There was no, I can't talk about this, I can't do this, I can't do that. Something that draws me to the solution-focused conversation is actually we can talk about some really difficult stuff. And in the nature of the questions and the way in which we ask them creates the environment in which that person can speak. And if we have time, I've actually got some kind of quotes from both participants as to how they experienced the sessions, so we can have a little look at what their thoughts were after, having gone through this. And that's quite illuminating as well. Shall we have a look at the ADHD brain? Okay.
There were a lot of clicking.
There's a lot of clicking. I know. Sorry about that. Here we go. ADHD. Where's my mouse? Here we go.
What are your best hopes from us talking today?
I get a bit of better understanding of sort of how my brain works in connection to me, I suppose, for about this specifically. But for me, I'd like to work out specifically what it is that makes me chill out, if that makes sense. I understand that it's a big ask, but there's been a couple of things that have happened recently that have normally would have rocked my world, but haven't, for whatever reason. And I don't know if I can necessarily put my finger on what it is, and I don't necessarily need to, but if I'm able to replicate that, then wicked.
Okay, cool. So, can you give me an example of something that's happened recently then?
Yeah, so last night, I was having a lovely dream. I went to bed early, which is cool. My gut was a little bit funny. I thought there's a connection. But I was dreaming really nicely. And I've not dreamt about my relationships and stuff like that negatively, or anything really for that matter, for a while. And certainly nothing sort of more fruity, if you will.
Yeah.
I had a dream last night where we were getting along really well. Things were good, like really nice conversation, like nice feelings, nice thoughts, all this sort of stuff. And then in my dream, she just said one thing, and I just woke up, just like that, just straight woke up, like everything. I don't know what I was doing while I was asleep. I can't be like, but everything just. Yeah, you're not filming, are you? That motion. And normally I would play that over in my head, and it would really rile me up. One, because I'd thought about it. Why am I thinking about that? Two, the subject matter upsets me. I don't like it. But for some reason this morning it was all right. And I can't work out why that was, if I went through a process at that point when I woke up, or what it was that I think I acknowledged it, saw it, and then saw myself in a different place. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, it was very different, and it was nice.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So thinking about that, then, it being really different this morning. what difference did that make to you when you realised that you processed that differently?
It was comforting. And it also meant that my rest of my morning could carry on normal.
Yeah.
And that I was able to focus because my mind wasn't elsewhere.
Yeah.
And what used to happen was I used to have something like that, a thought that would be a catalyst for a whole load of other shit to come in. And I was saying that normally I would distract myself in some way, shape or form by thinking about something else which is slightly more extreme possibly, or something like that, or something that I'm in control of. Whereas this morning that wasn't the case. I just felt in control of it without having to go through that conscious, I need to sit down, I need to count to whatever, I do some deep breathing, all this sort of stuff. It just sort of kind of just went, and happened.
I was going to say, what did you notice about yourself then?
I think I was able just to put it down to a thought and just leave it at that, or a feeling and just leave it at that, rather than like asking why I'm feeling like that, how I'm feeling like that, asking myself sort of, or beating myself up, if you will, as to different scenarios in my head that I'm thinking about, which either do or don't exist. And it's just like, okay, today I didn't do that. I don't know what, I can't place what the difference was. It was literally just that, like the penny just dropped, if that made sense. And I said about it, I spoke to her, I said, like, I just, normally that would make a difference, like, mess the day up, but at the same time, it hasn't. So it's really cool. So yeah, there you go.
It is cool. And so, what was her reaction then? What response did she make to that? She's positive about it, which is cool. And that makes me happy, which is cool. I often worry about talking about those things with her, especially if I'm heightened. Whereas this morning, because I wasn't heightened, she wasn't necessarily heightened, right,
and so on and so forth. Likewise, if she had been heightened and the rest of it, I wasn't heightened. So whatever happened, it didn't necessarily. I was a little bit not heightened, but I was aware that things that I needed to be aware of things, i.e., not going down, boo-hoo route.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't feel like that. Somebody started to go that way. I don't know why. Yeah.
And what do you think this may have meant in terms of would this have made a difference to knowing that you reacted differently?
Yeah, that's what I told her. Because it's for me, it's a positive movement forwards.
Yeah.
For me, communication's huge. So I'm like, okay, plus I just can't keep my mouth shut half the time. But I was just like, okay, it felt nice, and I wanted to share that. That's what it is. And I think for me, I don't brag. I don't sort of shout my successes from the significant. In fact, I'm probably more likely just to ignore them. So for me to acknowledge the fact that I've done that enough to say her about it, it's quite a big thing. So it's not something that normally happens. I'm more likely to turn around to my bosses and tell them they're fucking idiots, because that doesn't affect me in the same way. So does that make sense? It's just
it does. It does.
But it's cool, and the way that's affected the rest of my day as well.
Okay.
It's just nice, rather than going into work feeling like I've not finished something. and going in and having to distract myself from what it is that I'm actually thinking about. That thinking had already been done and dusted. And it allowed, like I said, it just allowed me to focus on what it was I needed to focus on, which was really nice. So it's like, for me, it's cool.
Okay. Quite a different pattern. Quite a different pattern. Any thoughts on that?
I noticed that whenever he would say, I can't, or I'm thinking, or any form of negative word, I noticed, I can't remember what it was, the gamma, the red one. There was a lot of gamma flare-ups. It was actually incredible, just picking out on single words. But then when he was talking quite positively, there was either no activity or very little activity, or a big burst of bright blue.
Yes.
Just by picking out positive words. And when he was thinking positively, there was a lot of blues and very light purples. But then when he was saying that I can't and I don't like, and then when he was talking about something he wasn't happy with, there was just all these really dark purples and reds and blues and just the whole brain. And I just found that really interesting, how even a particular word, just one word, can trigger such thought process. Just a word could just flare up so many thoughts in somebody's head. It was just incredible to watch. That was just amazing. It really is amazing to watch.
That's a fantastic observation, Jason, because if you think of the pink and the red, that's much more intense activity. These, the negative being associated with a lot of intensity. This is somebody who's experienced a lot of negative stuff in his life, and there's a lot there in the background. And that I can't, like you said, that provoked such an intense response. And how lovely that it took him into theta, into that kind of calm, problem-solving state, that lovely place when he was talking about what he can do. And when he was reflecting on things that were better.
Yeah,
and
beautiful blues.
The beautiful blues, And again, that's really kind of resonates with me and why we use solution-focused conversation. That we're not afraid of the negatives, we're not afraid of the things that hurt and that damage us, but that we can find ways to bring ourselves into that kind of solution finding, that resource finding, that skills recognition, all of that work actually creates quite a different experience in the brain. And that is reflected actually in the quotes we've got, for his post-session kind of interview. Of the experience that he had in this. I love that you picked that up, Jason.
No, the first time I watched it at the conference, I was just in awe. I was watching and thinking, wow, this is so interesting. But then watching it a second time, I knew what was happening, so I was able to focus on what was being said. So it's sort of like when you've had something that you're afraid to eat and you're tasting it a second time and your tongue's not as scared. And it tastes really nice. It's sort of like the same thing. So I was able to watch it because I knew what was coming and just focus on what was triggering those moments. Mind-blowing, literally. My whole brain's firing up at the moment.
But it's the same for me. Every time I see this, I'm like, wow, there's something else that I'm seeing. Because it's almost, it's hypnotic, isn't it? The visual image is beautiful. You start getting kind of immersed in what's going on there. And then you swap into the auditory, the kind of the sound of it all. And then you start listening to that. And then you switch back into the visual. And it takes a few watches to kind of make sense of it.
Yeah, it really does. Beautiful things, honestly.
Thank you.
Rachel, you said this gentleman had experienced a lot of negative things in his life. And one thing I thought of just for perhaps future research is, a lot of times ADHD, PTSD is diagnosed as ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
Or they just overlap. It can be really confusing to tease those out.
Yeah.
But to compare someone who's experienced PTSD versus ADHD and see if there's a difference in the brains.
Yeah, I think that would be a lot, really interesting thing. We've done quite a bit of trauma work with this person, and I agree. I think we also need to consider what is a reaction to life events rather than necessarily a wiring difference, or is the wiring difference kind of exaggerated by life events? And trying to extract that is, an interesting thing. And talking to men of age 40 to 65, things have happened, right? And so we've all got a lot to reflect on, and that comes to this, doesn't it? It comes to the session. And again, coming back to the idea of solution-focused conversation, it's there for everybody. Your background, the way you're processing, the way you're wired, however you want to describe yourself. When we look at the follow-up, they all had very similar experiences. And yet so much difference was going on in the sessions.
Was that your first session with, so other than the initial, was that your first session you had with him?
That was a session that was about a year after any other sessions. And the work that had been done before, although, yes, it's embedded within a solution-focused ideology, it was around trauma work and other things. So this was the first time perhaps he'd heard the questions in such a deliberate way. And like I say, it's been about a year since we'd had any therapy.
Wow, thank you.
My first reaction was, oh my God, he wants to know how his brain works. How about because that's a big ask. But he seemed to be aware of the differences that it made. Waking up in that way, the conversation he had with his partner, the way it affected him at work. So he was quite self-aware of the difference, which
very much so. Yeah, I agree.
We haven't got through half of it. It's already an hour and 7 minutes, Rachel.
We haven't got much more to go. If we've got time, I can just kind of go through what they thought of the sessions.
Yeah.
Useful? Yeah. Okay.
We're not going to stop you. It's about you having time.
So we have the 100-click journey into the slides. Right, let's have a look. So we had short interviews with all of the participants. And these are quotes from the people that we've presented today. So it was immediately after the session. Now, I have had subsequent conversations with people and they confirm that, change has happened, but this is immediately after the session. So the neurotypical, I'm noticing a difference already. It's funny how talking through it does affect you, like you feel better, expecting to feel better, a picture of feeling better. It does feel better. The expectations of feeling better, it does feel better. It really does. My expectations are lifted just by talking about the possibility of them. It's definitely true, effectively, that this type of therapy works. So this was following, a 20-minute conversation that included preferred future, which I kind of alluded to in the kind of development of this person's best hopes answer in the earlier slide. I wasn't able to present the whole audio of that one because the quality of it wasn't good enough, but they just wanted to feel a little bit better, a little bit lighter. And this was immediately afterwards. So this isn't even with time to process and notice and experience the difference. Already change is happening as a direct result of the session. So really lovely to see that. The feedback from the person on the autism spectrum, the comment that I've pulled out here, sort of, asking about the session and what they got from it. And he answered probably the feeling that I was being listened to, and the feeling that the therapist understood where I was coming from and what I was talking about. If I had the feeling that the therapist thought that it was very strange, then I would probably have shut up and not talked any further about it. And that's kind of an interesting thing to pick up on, isn't it? That we are very steady and measured in our response to what the person says, because they might be looking for our reaction. And so he says, if I had had the feeling or the thought that it was very strange, then I would probably have shut up and not talked any further about it. And because there wasn't that reaction, he felt able to continue. I felt that the therapist was paying attention, and I felt that the therapist was giving a lot of thought to my responses. The therapist wasn't just speaking quickly on top of what I was talking about. They paused, gave it some thought, and then moved on. So I guess I must have thought that I was being listened to. So lovely reflection there on the experience for him, and a reminder of the importance of how we respond when people say something to us, that they don't feel inhibited in going further with that thing that they are worried about. And then the feedback from our guy with ADHD, going through the process, the talking through the process, and having someone, and specifically the therapist, asking relevant questions is really useful. To me, it has a lot to do with like the delivery, if you will, the place where I am at physically. It was really comfortable, but the questions specifically, they highlight things, but they highlight a space when it is that they make me think of a different perspective, I suppose. To have them highlighted for me specifically means that it's being listened to, it's being heard, it's being spoken of, and it's being done in a non-judgmental sort of open way. See, back to that kind of feeling of how we respond to what's being said, that they aren't being judged, that we are enabling a space in which they can talk. It's being done in a non-judgmental sort of open way, which allows me to, it allows me to think of things differently, I suppose. If the questions are focused and directed, I'm thinking specifically about those things. If, for instance, and then the client kind of refers to getting whirlwinds of thoughts when questions aren't focused and directed. And that's kind of a really nice link to his lived experience of having ADHD, right? So the specificity of the questions, the focus of the questions was very helpful for him. By going in there, I get myself into a space where I'm able to be open. That works really well for me. The way she uses my own language as well. I feel as if I'm met on a level. For me to have somebody that I respect and that respects me, which I mean by the openness, that really allows me to be free. So here we are. It's taking great care to meet the person where they are and to create an environment in which they feel not judged, that they can say what they need to say, that they can speak openly, freely, but also that the questions are direct enough, that they're focused enough, that it helps them identify the core concern that they want to work on today. And so that message comes through all three of them, right? All three quite different sessions, all three quite different concerns, all three quite different approaches to the session. And all resulting in this wonderful outcome, that they felt heard, that they could speak, that they weren't judged, and that they could investigate the concern in their own time.
This is the first time you're going to see everybody speechless. Yet there are probably 1,000 questions running through everyone's mind, and they just don't know where to start.
Well, I mean, I appreciate these quotes at the end as well. So you have their words commenting on their reaction to the best hopes questions, together with their brains. Geez, both commenting on the reaction. It's good to have them together like that.
Yeah.
And the common thread was they felt listened to, which was really, really important, I guess, for anyone, because we don't know what questions to ask until we've heard the answer from the client, so we have to listen.
Yeah, that fits with, I've seen published qualitative studies of clients who successfully terminated therapy. They were asked what worked, essentially. What was their explanation for therapy working for them, helping them? And regardless of theoretical approach, and in these studies, it always comes back, I felt listened to. I felt validated, trusted. It wasn't about any technique. You know, it wasn't like, oh, I loved it when the therapist focused on my irrational thoughts. Or I loved it when the therapist had me do the empty chair technique, or the therapist asked me the miracle question. The common theme is, I feel listened to, validated, heard, accepted.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, despite everyone wanting to continue this conversation and ask 1,001 very valid questions, I'm sure, we need to draw to an end. Except for a second, and then so did I. So, do you want to wrap it up, Rachel, and then we'll get the last words from the gang? Any comments that they want to share?
Oh, I mean, all I have to say is thank you so much for offering me this opportunity, and more importantly, thank you to everybody who took part in the work. They gave their time freely, and you know, they trusted us with this research project, and they trusted us with their most intimate thoughts and concerns, and that is such a privilege to be part of those people's lives for a moment. And you know, just extending my thanks to everybody who took part in the work.
Brilliant. Can I go to Gil?
Well, I thank you, Rachel, for doing this work and making it available to everyone. I know I've watched other videos of your presentations, and this is probably the most intriguing one so far. And I know I'm after Joe and I should put this up on the FBS YouTube channel. I know I'm going to go back and watch it again, and probably several times. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Can I go to Jason?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is the second time I've watched this, and it's just far more. It's like even more fascinating than the first time I watched it. It's just so amazing. And the one thing I've picked up, that regardless of whether being autistic or ADHD or even neurotypical, it's the importance of being heard and being listened to. And that's what counts, is to be there to listen, be there for your client, be there for your student, be there for the person that's in front of you, and just give them that space to be heard and listened to. And this just shows, regardless of how each and every person's brain works, how important it is just to be felt, just to feel that you are being noticed, and that you as a person being there for them and listening to what they have to say. So yeah, it was an eye-opener.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. First time we met you in Bath.
Thank you.
We were amazed, and we still are amazed by what you do. Let us know what your next thing is. Yes, be interesting. But yeah, thank you for your time. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Rachel, you're getting a lot of people commenting via YouTube and LinkedIn. Grainer, thank you, Rachel and the gang. Dorothea, brilliant chat. Alice, Kelly, where's Catherine's one? Thank you so much. Please do more of these. So Catherine has spoken.
All right, Catherine.
And we all listen. We all listen to Catherine. So yeah, thank you so much. You know how much I love and appreciate you. And I think that was absolutely wonderful. And Lorraine, who was sitting next to me, who's now gone on the other side, was, if you heard her going, ooh, ooh, she absolutely loved it. So thank you very much. We do have another FBS chat tomorrow, a local FBS chat with Paul Everett and Ginny from Enfield Women's Centre, talking about the local motion, which is a brand new mental health initiative. So join to learn more about that. Thank you, everybody. Could I ask you guys to just stay so we can say our goodbyes, and everybody else have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.